Hey, it's Ray Sears. I heard at a recent seminar that video is the medium of choice when you're putting content on the web. And since YouTube's owned by Google, anything you see on YouTube is going to get indexed and put out into the internet for posterity. And so a couple of years ago, I compiled a bunch of previous essays into a book called Let Go to Listen, Cape Cod Ruminations. And there's me in front of my grandma's house with my BB gun. Makes me think of that story from Christmas about don't shoot your eye out. So I thought, why not? Why not just read you some of these stories that I've written? The first story is called Let Go to Listen from the fall of 2017. I recently read a book my mom gave me called Just Listen, Discover the Secret to Getting to Absolutely Anyone by Mark Goulston. It makes you think, be more interested than interesting. What is the power of Rewire yourself to listen. No one listens anymore. At my daughter Katie's white coat ceremony, when matriculating to her physician assistant program, a very experienced MD told the students that he had a patient who had just run a marathon with a highly competitive brother. The patient was complaining of shin splints, a sore foot, dehydration, and overall malaise. The doctor started to prescribe medicines and treatments to ease these symptoms when the patient said, "No, doc, you don't understand. I want you to write me a note that says I'm never allowed to run another marathon so I can show it to my brother." The whole theme of the white coat ceremony was that these students should learn how to listen to their patients. Sitting at a table in a restaurant, I noticed a family of 4 across the way, and no one was speaking. Each person was looking down at his own cell phone. What has happened to us? We seem to have become totally disconnected. I'm sorry, I don't have a solution, but I can ruminate about listening. Television must have been the start of it all. When a family had to sit around a radio and listen to find out what's going on, they were practicing a skill that's been passed down through generations. Someone tells a story and someone else listens. The stories need to paint a picture just like a book does. Today, our stories cannot last any longer than 3 minutes, the length of a typical pop song, or the audience is lost. In Germany, we went without TV for 3 years. Well, there was the Armed Forces Network channel, but the signal was weak in our little burg. There were no satellites or cable then. My favorite treat was listening to Armed Forces radio. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows. In order to listen properly, the MD said, first you must sit down and get on the same level with your patient, and even better if you'll hold the other person's hand. While one wizard of a doctor was holding my hand and talking to me about my tonsils, he managed to measure my pulse, feel for stress, and look at my fingernails to determine blood flow. He didn't have to say a word, and he had learned volumes about me just holding my hand. These days, doctors hardly even touch you. In a recent TED Talk describing how to add 10 years to your life, the speaker, Jay McGonigal, said, you can add minutes to every day of your life by developing 4 post-traumatic growth strengths and lead a life with fewer regrets. They are physical resilience, don't sit still, get up and move. Mental resilience, count backward from 100 by 7s. Emotional resilience, look out the window. And finally, social resilience, shake someone's hand for 6 seconds. Awkward, right? But the handshake raises the level of oxytocin in your blood. Just an editorial note, since COVID, we've given up shaking hands. I believe learning how to listen will give you social resilience and result in a longer life. You may be familiar with movies that show soldiers communicating with walkie-talkies, or maybe you've used a CB radio at some time. Only one person can talk at a time. What a blessing. The button on the microphone says PTT, push to talk. When I started as a new lieutenant, my operator had to remind me, sir, you need to let go to listen. It sounds simple and makes sense, but it's not always intuitive. Besides that, as long as you have your radio keyed, you are transmitting a signal. And even if you're not saying anything, the enemy is triangulating your position so he can drop a mortar round on you. It got to the point that for our training to go to Vietnam, I never went. The war was over just months after I became a lieutenant. They told us that if you acknowledge a transmission, just key your mic twice. The receiver hears click, click, and knows you got the message without you saying a word and further disclosing your locations. I don't know if you can see it, but there's my dad talking on a radio telephone in 1953, Grafenwehr, Germany. I love to listen to my mom, dad, grandmothers, and cousins tell stories. They were about the Great New England Hurricane of 1938, when Mom says that Grandpa and Grandpa had to take an inside door and nail it over a window that had been blown out of their home near Worcester. There were stories about fishing and sailing and traveling the world, including a trip through the Panama Canal in 1929. Grandma Sanders told about the two oldest of 8 kids milking cows before they went to school in the morning, and Mom said lunch was often a fried egg sandwich brought in a paper bag. Grandma told about the boys having to dig a huge hole in the backyard for the outhouse. Mom told about the first indoor plumbing. Mom says somehow Grandma was able to come up with a completely new Easter outfit for all 8 kids every year, and that Tuesday was hot dog night when everyone could bring a friend to dinner. Mom says the only heat in their house was the wood stove in the kitchen. That's where you heated water for the galvanized tub, and there was a hole in the ceiling above the stove to allow heat to migrate up to the bedrooms. It might have been nice to have an old feather bed that would hold 8 kids and 4 hound dogs and a piggy they stole from the shed. Dad tells about crawling through cranberry bogs on hands and knees while in college picking berries in East Dennis. Did you know there are 333 cranberries in a pound and 3,333 berries in a gallon of cranberry juice? He was picking for Lou Kroll in East Dennis. Lou's sister Gita, who lived across the street from Grandma Sears, told me about her younger days as a school teacher when a teacher was not allowed to marry. Both Gita and my cousin Ruth Sears were lifetime school teachers who went to the Hyannis Normal School. You know that teachers have great stories. Gita told of spending her later years taking care of her parents, Lou Sr. and Susan Hall, and her sister Lydia, who was also a school teacher. They lived in Moose House on Main Street in East Dennis with a prominent moose head brought back from Canada by the elder Lou Kroll. Mooses of all shapes and sizes were situated everywhere in that house. It was a treat for us kids to go over and visit and hear the old stories again. Dad told how Mom's brother, Uncle Bobby, once shot an arrow across Main Street and into the dining room at the old Stagecoach Inn, and what it took to calm the patrons and fix that window. Did I mention these old stories were told again and again? That repetition's important. My daughter Valerie tells me of the patients she chats up while working as a dental hygienist. Their stories are hilarious. She found out that once you numb up a patient, someone has to stay with them. One fella got up from the chair mid-appointment after receiving the anesthetic, and she said, "Where are you going?" He said, "It doesn't hurt anymore. Thanks, I'm leaving." How do I know these stories? Well, my mom and my sisters helped me. For the past 15 years, we've gotten together every Friday morning for an hour and listened. We live in Oklahoma and Florida and New Hampshire, but that does not stop us. You can do it too. We started with AOL Instant Messenger typing in a chat. Yes, it's true. Sometimes we do get more than one conversation going, but it keeps us in touch. Then with the advent of Facebook Messenger, we switched over to that app and conducting our Volca chat. That's the term we coined for our weekly chat, German for weekly chat. It was even easier. You need to have regular interaction with someone to keep lines of communication open. In the Army, it was called joining the net, one of our priorities. And Amateur Radio Net is on the air, gathering of amateur radio operators. We've had nets long before the internet was conceived. I'll bet some readers even have been part of a party line, telephone groups, and they've had conversations with multiple neighbors at once. Mom says kids were not allowed to use the phone in her house. I found it takes nearly an hour talking with someone to get past the small talk and to the things that matter. Mom now participates every month with a group called Conversations That Matter. Would that we could all be part of that group. One reason I write these stories is in hopes that my kids will know that the world really was in Technicolor back in the old days, despite what we see in the movies. Life was pretty exciting back then, and we have to convey that somehow. Our stories are important, and I hope you'll write yours down. Let me know if I can help you in any way. Did you notice it only took you 3 minutes to read this story? As you can tell, it was this story that gave me the title for the book and the inspiration to compile all these ruminations in one place. And just another little picture of the old days. When people visited, there's a clam bake on the beach at a makeshift picnic table in East Dennis with my close cousins and grandparents. Thanks a lot. I'll be back with another story.